Now, this is a part of the channel where I'm just going to stop making arguments of we should study this and study that and see how they can come together and the internal conflict we're fighting. Jeez, cats. And I'm gonna start talking about astrology and trying to explain it to you, because I can't keep going back and forth between whether we talk about this or we talk about that, or what society accepts and what doesn't. So just take a swim with me. We're gonna teach you astrology in the fastest way possible, in the shallowest way possible, like a kiddie pool, where you can get your feet wet. And then if you decide to go deeper, I'm going to go a little bit deeper, but not too deep, because all the resources are out there. There's so many experts out there on the web, like it's not even funny. But the problem that I have, like I might have mentioned before, is they don't take the time to basically break it down, and it just causes people to be overwhelmed and like astrology BS. So the last video I did mention that the most important signs, placements that you have in your astrological chart are your sun sign, which is, hey, what's your sign? I'm a Leo. That's your sun sign. We just don't say sun because that's the most common sign that people ask for. And then the second one is the moon sign, and then moon, and the third one is your ascendant sign. Now, the ascendant isn't actually a planet, and the moon is kind of considered a planet in astrology. So for the sake of, explaining things, when I say planet, if I say the planet the sun or the planet the moon, just ride with me here, okay? It's just a way of describing this, and I get lost in thought on when to say planet, and other people call it planet too, so whatever. So your three most important signs, and I want you to look this up before we go deeper into astrology, and I break down where it came from, how it's organized, how artful I think it is, and how it ties into society and life as large. Why don't you look up your signs? So there's plenty of free sites. I think I'm going to link a couple free sites that I like to use, but there's so many out there. There's just these calculators so that you can figure out what your sun sign was, or sun sign is, excuse me, your moon sign and your ascendant. Now, in order to get your ascendant sign, you need to know your exact birth time and birthplace. Now, this is a hard one for some people. Sometimes you may not have that information, and there's people you can consult with to try to help you figure out, based on the energies that you're exhibiting, to figure what that is. But for the sake of this, I'm just going to assume you know your birth time, and if you don't, we're just going to have to worry with the sun and moon at this point until you further understand astrology and try to pick up on what your ascendant is. So, like I said in the last video, your sun sign is going to be, if this is the disk, the sun's in the middle right here, the Earth's right here. You draw a line from the Earth to the sun, because that's 2 points. It creates a straight line. You hit the backdrop of, the stars. And for me, I'm a sun sign Leo, so Leo's back here. So the Leo constellation has certain characteristics, which I'll go into depth in another video, that shine those characteristics of the sun. The sun has a specific purpose. The sun is what represents your actions and your outward appearance and what people see from you and the things you do every day and what is observable, the look that you give off. This is your sun sign. So when it enters the constellation Leo, in my case, Leo is shining the energies of Leo into the sun, and the sun is shining that onto me. So my actions and my behavior is being influenced from the constellation Leo. Now, what is Leo? So in this case, Leo is going to be, the lion, the center of attention, the king of the jungle, something to take into consideration. It is at the peak of summer. It is a fixed fire sign. So fire signs, and I'll get into elements at a different time, but fire signs are very passionate. They're very outward. They're very expressive. They have visions. And then fixed signs, they burn very brightly. So when you take the fixed element and you have a cardinal, fixed, and mutable modalities, which I kind of briefly touched on, this is the fixed modality. It's like a strong burning fire. So these are very passionate people, but you can't really move them. They're not that mobile. They're very fixed on their own way of seeing things. So all of that Leo energy gets filtered through the sun, and the sun brings all of that behavior into my actions and what people see from me, and that gets imprinted onto me when I was born. That's how I have the sun sign Leo, because the constellation Leo was behind the sun when I was born. I explained this in the last video. So that's how I got my sun sign. Now, the moon sign is calculated very similarly to the sun sign, except you draw the line from the Earth to the moon, and whatever constellation is behind the moon is your moon sign. Now, in my case, and I'm going to use myself as an example, I'm a Gemini moon. What this means is that the moon was in the constellation Gemini when I was born. And the moon's purpose for you is your emotions, your reactions, and the things you are on the inside, things that you truly feel. And the more I look into astrology, I almost feel like the moon sign is more important than the sun sign, but they're all equally important. But I think the top three, like I'm saying, like the sun, moon, and rising signs are going to be the most important ones. But I'm starting to find that the moon sign is most important because this is your internal dialogue. This is what you're thinking about behind this thing. This is not really what people can easily pick up from, your thought process, your emotions, your reactions to things. So for me, my thoughts and emotions are in a Gemini way. Gemini is air. It is the twins. It makes me quick. It makes me have conflicting ideas of the same thing. It makes me seem to contradict myself, but it also makes me a good multitasker, and it's a mutable sign, so I'm very good at details and communicating my emotions to people and communicating my ability to relate my emotions to people. And this is my internal dialogue. And so when Gemini's in my moon and Leo's in my sun, what happens is my internal dialogue does, the things that it does. It wants to communicate and analyze and, relate, and it pushes that out in a Leo sun mechanism. So really, as a Leo, I'm being expressive. I'm doing these Leo things where I'm outgoing. I want like to be the center of attention, but I've got this like motivation that comes out of me to want to relate to people and communicate emotions and think about things in a more critical manner. Not necessarily too critical, but in a detailed manner. So the sun and moon, you can already see like we've just done 2 planets, and you can already see that the energies are mixing a lot. But if you only learn about 3 different placements in your chart, learn about these 3. So that was number 2. So we did the moon, we did the sun already. We talked about how the moon filters into the sun, and it gives me what I am. Last sign is your ascendant. So the ascendant is essentially the sign that the sun was rising in when you were born. Now there's 12 zodiac signs. The sun, the sun basically needs 24 hours, to cross the sky again, right? So basically your rising sign is going to change every 2 hours, and it's a little bit different on where you're born, right? So like, for example, I'm in LA, so the sun, actually it's like 11 o'clock right now or something like that. The sun is down over here, but if I was in Singapore, the sun would be up right now. So there would be a different sign because based on what your position of Earth and where it's rotated, the sun will be rising in a different way. And you can still have a rising sign if you're born in the dark. It's just where that sign was, but it's important to know the time of birth because within 2 hours it changes, and the location because that'll shift what sign your rising sign is. So for me, my rising sign is Taurus. Taurus is a very sturdy, fixed earth element sign. It makes me seem very like put together. It makes me stable. It makes Taurus also has a bit of a suave appeal to it, although I'm very quirky sometimes, but it kind of calms me down, and it has the effect of people thinking I'm more dependable than I am, which I am somewhat dependable, but it really gives off that energy, right? So the ascendant working in conjunction, now we have 3 things to take into consideration for this example. So sun, moon, rising. I'm Leo sun, Gemini moon, Taurus rising. So the rising sign is also known as like what your first impression is, which is very interesting, which it's not quite the sun sign, which is your actions, but it's like your personality, it's your flair. It's like the extra zing you give to things. It's if somebody met you and they had to quickly describe you after a minute, like they would be describing your ascendant sign. But if they observed you long enough, they would see your sun sign. And if they got into deep thought and emotions with you, they would see your moon sign come out. So one of the best analogies that I've ever heard, and shout out to Dolo the Pilot Man, he came up with the analogy of a car. So if you have a car, let's say, I don't know, you drive a BMW, right? The model of the BMW, you get a 3 Series, a 5 Series, an M5, or whatever other models they have, that is your sun sign. It is your outward appearance, right? The person driving the car, that is your moon sign. Your moon sign is basically the person making the decisions, thinking about where to go, where to drive. Should they, speed all the time? Should they be careful, etc.? That's your moon sign. And your emotions, what you think you should do, and it gets filtered out through your actions. Now, your rising sign, aka ascendant sign, is going to be the sign that gives you your flair, your zing, your personality, what people get off of you. So if you decide to put certain kind of rims in the car, this would be your ascendant flair. If you decided to, to lower it, if you decided that, the windows should be tinted out, if you decided to change the lights out, like this is like your flair. So it all kind of adds in together. So your ascendant is very much, I like to think of ascendant as this keyword, and the keyword I'm going to use is essence. It's your essence. It's what you give off to people. So It's not really your sun sign because it's not really actions, but it's kind of your essence, because the car is still a Beamer in this example, but it's kind of like, if it's like blacked out and the emblems are blacked out and it's lower and it's got HID lights, it's like cool, you know what I mean? So, but for me as a Taurus ascendant, I'm sturdy like that. So if I had a car that represented my 3 main placements, Leo Sun, Gemini Moon, and Taurus Rising, then, you know, I don't know what a Leo car would be, but like a red Corvette, let's say, right? Because a Leo likes to be expressive. They like to be center stage. They like people to look at them. They like to be the king of the jungle. So, of course, they've got to have a fast car. It's got to be red, and they need to catch attention, right? Now, the moon sign, for me as a driver, I would be, unfortunately, and I don't do this in real life, but unfortunately, I would be a teenager texting on their phone, calling up somebody else on my friend who let me borrow the phone, and still driving somewhere and having random thoughts in different directions, and, you know, multitasking. And actually, Gemini moons are one of the few signs that can multitask pretty well. So, but I'd be one of those people that's kind of like driving. Maybe I'm not driving erratically all the time, but I'm still having this multitasking ability in my red Corvette, which kind of sounds like a dangerous personality. I can spin myself up, which is very true. But then there's the Taurus flare to it. So the Taurus flare is very stable. So for a Corvette to be dressed out with the Taurus flare, it would really be like low maintenance rims that look nice, you know, something that you don't have like a ton of spokes on and you have to really clean like every single spoke, like something that makes sense, that doesn't get dirty too often. The tires would be pretty standard. I'm not trying to make Taurus to be boring, but they can be kind of plain. Maybe they didn't upgrade the exhaust, or, you know, maybe they only go for the stock upgrades, because the stock upgrades are the most stable, and these are the things that the dealership sells for a particular reason, because, you know, they're approved by the factory, etc., stuff like that. So that is what I would look like in a car. So what you need to do is go find one of these websites. You're going to need to know your birth time, like I said, and your birth location. You're going to punch in all this stuff. You're going to get other stuff like where your Mercury is, your Venus, your Mars, all these other planets, all these different signs that you have. But study the sun, moon, and rising signs first. And then try to paint yourself as a car and think about how that works out in life. And then try to describe what you find about these signs. Google each sign. So for me, if I didn't know anything about astrology and I was you watching this video, then I'd be like, okay, like if my moon's in Gemini, because I already know about sun, everyone knows about their sun sign. If you don't, you can look that up too, but I'm assuming that you've had some curious interest and you're like, oh yeah, I'm a Leo, because most everybody knows that much. Not that they're a Leo, but they know their sun sign. But I would go, okay, cool, like this moon sign thing, this is interesting. So I'm a Gemini moon. Let me go to Google. Gemini moon, start reading about it. And then, you know, you find out from the calculator that you're a Taurus ascendant or whatever you are. You're like, cool, Taurus ascendant. Google, look it up, watch some videos, get some interaction for that, and then do yourself some homework to see if you really understand this. Try to figure out if your sun sign had a car, what it would be. If your car had a driver, which is your moon sign, what would this person be and what would they be doing? And then if you had any flare on your car based on that sign, which is your ascendant, what kind of flare would you have? So go do that, and then I want you to keep that in mind as we start breaking down astrology, because I really don't want to give you the origins of astrology, because it's going to take too damn long and you're going to be like, I don't know how this deals with me. So go do that, and then save your planetary positions as well, because we'll talk about those later. So see you on the next one.